A very busy show tonight. My Mark Meets guest is the internationally acclaimed American doctor, Dr. Ken Berry. He thinks he can reverse your type 2 diabetes and take a few notches off your belt. He is live at 10. Hear his incredible story and his ideas for better health and weight loss. Plus, in the big question, if Boris Johnson gets thrown out of number 10, does that risk Brexit being cancelled? We'll speak to two top viewers there who take strongly opposing opinions. Plus, we're going to have my all-star panel and a satirical take on the day's big stories in my alternative news headlines and in my big opinion, the bonkers and misguided school taking meat off the menu. As far as I'm concerned, you can burger off. Big stories, big guests and big Sunday night entertainment straight after the headlines with Miranda.
Thank you. Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. The White House has confirmed the US president has spoken to his Ukrainian counterpart today in a bid to de-escalate the crisis with Russia. The two leaders agreed by phone to continue pursuing diplomacy and deterrence, although President Biden made it clear the US would respond swiftly to any incursion by Russia. The Ukrainian government has allocated more than £400 million to keep its airspace open after several airlines have started to review its flights. While Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby told US media Russia was continuing to amass troops at the border.
He continues to add force capability, well over 100,000 right now, and actually over the last few days even more. And number two, I think a mosaic of the intelligence that we're seeing. Not speaking to it specifically, but you know, we have good sources of intelligence, and they're telling us that you know, that things are sort of building now to some sort of crescendo opportunity for Mr. Putin.
Well, the government must learn from last year's Afghanistan evacuation if Russia invades Ukraine. That's according to Labour's shadow Foreign Secretary. David Lammy is calling for phone lines to be staffed 24/7 and extra resources to process visas in order to help people leave the country. Meanwhile, he's written to the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss saying the Labour Party is united with the government over Russian aggression. A group of senior Tory MPs and peers are urging Boris Johnson to reverse the government's ban on fracking to help deal with the UK's energy crisis. In a joint letter to the Prime Minister, Lord Frost and around 29 other Conservatives said it's time to reverse this moratorium. The shale gas mining ban came into effect in 2019 after two minor earthquakes in Lancashire. Power has been restored in northwest London after thousands of people were plunged into darkness. Around 38 postcodes in the Harrow, Edgware and Wembley areas were affected by the huge power cut. It was due to a fault with an underground electricity cable. The National Grid has apologised for the disruption. Police have moved in to clear and arrest the remaining protesters near North America's busiest land border crossing, the Ambassador Bridge in Canada. Demonstrators opposing vaccine mandates had occupied the bridge for 5 days, slowing trade and prompting President Biden to call for an end to the siege. Now, when it comes to compensation claims, this next story must be a record. Northern Power has apologised after 74 customers were sent cheques worth £2.3 trillion each. One customer tweeted an image of the bumper payout received following power cuts during Storm Arwen last November, although he did ask if the company was sure they could afford it. They were swiftly cancelled and the corrected amounts, albeit smaller, are said to be in the post. Well, on TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Well, it's Sunday, the 13th of February, and you are watching Mark Dolan tonight. In the big question, if Boris Johnson goes, does that threaten Brexit? We'll hear from both sides on that one. My Mark Meets guest is the leading US medic that doesn't play by the rules. Dr. Ken Berry is the author of a best-selling book called Lies My Doctor Told Me. His unconventional approach to health, nutrition and weight loss has won him a legion of fans around the world. So what is his secret? Well, the answer may just save your life and cause you to lose a few notches on your belt buckle. The remarkable Dr. Ken Berry is live at 10. Plus at 10 o'clock, a satirical look at the day's big stories in my alternative news headlines. And in the news agenda, do older people have trouble making new friends? Should British athletes be attending the Winter Olympics in China? And can you tell the difference between posh designer clothes and cheap high street rip-offs? Answering those questions and more tonight are my brilliant panel. Journalist and broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, and journalist Georgia Gilholey. Now I want to hear from you throughout the show. Mark at gbnews.uk. A busy 3 hours to come. It is Sunday night, so fire up the kettle, tear open the jammy Dodgers, and let's get to work. Welcome to Bonkers Britain. The Sun newspaper are reporting that students at Barrowford Primary School near Nelson in Lancashire have taken meat off the menu. Pupils are only offered vegetarian dinners, and mums and dads are even being encouraged to actually send vegetarian food in their packed lunch boxes. The head teacher of the school, Rachel Tomlinson, said she'd made the decision to offer only vegetarian lunches to stop climate change. She went on to say, "Our children learn about the principles of sustainable development as part of the national curriculum and are really interested in how they can contribute to better looking after the environment. We made our school lunches meat-free to demonstrate how each of us making a small change to our daily habits can have a much wider positive impact, and that reducing meat consumption is just one way to do this." Give me strength. Whatever happened to teaching them writing, reading, and arithmetic? Over the last 2 years, have our little people not suffered enough? Needless school closures, for which there is scant evidence the spread of COVID was reduced. And those closures have affected children's mental health, their academic development, their self-confidence, and of course, ultimately, their life chances. Stuck on a laptop, if the family was lucky enough to own one, watching Zoom lessons of haphazard quality. Kids couldn't interact with their friends, see their teachers face to face, or even pick up a football and have a kickabout in the local park. In fact, local parks had their own bizarre rules, including the truly dystopian image of taped-up playgrounds whose gates were bolted shut. And of course, children as young as 11 have been wearing face coverings for months on end, all day long in the classroom. I honestly can't understand the mentality of a teacher who thinks it's either necessary or in any way acceptable to cover the faces of children, particularly with those scientifically debatable masks. Some of our teachers have been heroic. But if you're a teacher that thinks school closures were justified and proportionate, then I suggest you're in the wrong occupation. If I was a school teacher, I would have wanted full classrooms throughout the pandemic. I would have confiscated every single face mask. It begs the question, how many people working in education actually like kids? Well, actions speak louder than words. And now with this policy of literally taking nutritious food off their plates, we're damaging kids further. It's like taking candy from a kid. Children who faced negligible threats from the virus were the foot soldiers of this pandemic, protecting grandma. What a sick role reversal. Using kids as cannon fodder is something I can't find precedent for anywhere in our history. Call this a wonderful, enlightened generation? Do me a favour. Any society that doesn't put kids first is no society at all. What we've done to children over the last 2 years will be lasting and not forgotten. So now, children are to be the foot soldiers in tackling climate change. And the way we're going to do that is to interfere with their nutrition, just as we are in the grip of a childhood obesity crisis. Well done, everyone. One parent featured in the Sun article raged that the new meal plan was brought in ages ago and she'd only just found out why her daughter was talking about the disgusting new sausages at school. Here's what the mum had to say. She said, "My daughter ordered sausage and mash. When she bit into her sausage, she said, 'Ew.' She ended up just having mash for her dinner. I'm fuming." And so she should be. Another parent said, "No wonder my kids are starving," and raid the fridge before the shoes are off. "Vegetarian is a choice for when they are older." How right they are. Do you have any idea what a litany of horrors lurk within these highly processed vegetarian and vegan foods? Take a look at this. This is vegan bacon. It's not cheap, by the way, £2.50 for a pack. It's very slimy and oily. Here are the ingredients. Water, it's the first ingredient. Amazing, how nutritious. Sunflower oil, wheat protein, corn flour, carrageenan, E425, xanthan gum, pea protein, E40, E461, flavourings, fruit and vegetable fibres, salt, yeast extract, and so it goes on. Not natural, and frankly, they smell rank. I'm not having it. Now, of course, there are families and kids who go vegetarian by choice, sometimes for cultural, moral, or religious reasons. No problem. But the clear direction of travel is to brainwash our kids into ultimately going plant-based, except that any nutritionist worth their salt will tell you that kids need protein to grow up strong and healthy. And the most bioavailable, easily absorbed source of protein for the body is animal protein. That's a fact. That's not opinion. Meat, fish, eggs, dairy. Don't take my word for it. The Mail write that putting your children on a trendy vegan diet makes them grow up short and with weaker bones, according to a new study. Researchers found that children aged 5 to 10 who eat plant-based diets are on average 3 centimetres shorter than those who eat meat. Their bones were also smaller and less strong, putting the children at risk of fractures or osteoporosis in later life. The study by University College London's Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health said parents must be aware of the risks of vegan diets. They said vegan children should be given vitamin B12 and vitamin D supplements to reduce potentially long-term health consequences of being raised on plants only. It's not a ringing endorsement, is it? Shorter kids. And the environmental argument of a plant-based diet is debatable too, with staple items like corn, wheat, soy and grains requiring vast monocrop agriculture at odds with the cycle of nature and requiring vast amounts of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, not to mention the packaging and processing of these horrible fake meat products. If there's one thing we've learned during this pandemic, it's that we've got to put children first. And that starts with proper, balanced nutrition and 3 square meals a day, including at school. Kids deserve better than this processed rubbish. Take these vegetarian bangers, right? Look at that. Most of it's vegetable oil. How many stars would I give that out of 5? Not a sausage. I'm sorry, folks. It had to go. Now, with me reacting to the big stories of the day and taking a view on my big opinion monologue is my all-star panel. I'm delighted to welcome journalist and broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, and journalist and contributor to Young Voices UK, Georgia Gilholey. Great to have all three of you with me. Georgia, what do you think about schools going plant-based?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this particular head teacher chose to do this herself. We don't really know necessarily what the other teachers think. We can see that a lot of the parents weren't happy about it. It's probably why they went to the Daily Mail. I think it's interesting as well that she seems to justify it through the environmental argument. And, you know, as you were talking about previously, some of the crops and ingredients that are required for a lot of these vegetarian substitute products, which it seems that the school are using in these dinners, because obviously you can have vegetarian diet. You know, people have been doing it in certain cultures for thousands of years without, you know, corn sausages. They do require products like soy to be produced on a mass scale that is actually incredibly environmentally damaging, and it's certainly in many areas a lot more worse for the environment than sustainable forms of agriculture. So I think that these kind of things need to be thought about sensibly and in moderation, rather than just, oh, you know, we all need to, you know, force these children to be vegetarian for the sake of the environment. I think it's obviously not as straightforward as that, and I don't think it's this head teacher's business to impose it, because it's her belief.
Albie, to defend the head teacher, there is a clear link between animal agriculture and climate change. So is she onto something with this?
There is a link between animal agriculture and climate change, and I'm by no means anti-vegan or anti-vegetarian, but I am pro-choice, and I think that children and their parents should be free to choose what their children eat. And I think what I find uncomfortable about this story is that it was just imposed on them. There was no consultation with the parents. I imagine if there was consultation with the parents, it probably wouldn't have gone in the head teacher's favour. And I think that people have just got to choose what they want to eat and not feel like they're being dictated to when they're just trying to enjoy something nice to eat for lunch. And also another thing which is really important is when you think about children on free school meals, you know, it might be the one warm meal that they get, it might be the one meal that has decent protein in it, because fish and meat is expensive. So if you take that fish protein and the meat protein away from these children on free school meals, maybe they're not getting it at home. So I think there's a lot more that needs to be thought about before something like this is rolled out in a school.
Ingrid, it's very clear that vegetables are excellent for your health, but these processed fake meats are another story.
Well, that's exactly it. So, you know, we're talking about a vegetarian diet, but it's not vegetarian, is it? It's substitute meat. What's the point then? So the flavour of the meat they're liking, so you're kind of crossing over. I think that's completely wrong. Just do vegetable then only, but you do have to have the supplements. It's absolutely right. You have to have the B vitamins, because you get the iron deficiencies. You have to get your omega oils, loads of things. Actually, with the iron deficiency anemia, there's fatigue, dizziness, headaches, concentration problems and pale skin. And I know this from somebody I know that decided to go vegetarian quite early on. She was probably about 14 at the time, and she really started to look quite ill. She was paler than her siblings and not as healthy. I think it's very frightening as well. Later on, yes, of course, make that decision, but don't go for processed food, because it's just full of rubbish. And look at it, you've got the fattening things there as well, the wheats and the soyas and things like that, and your colourings. It's all
and the vegetable oil, of course.
Vegetable oil.
We'll be hearing later, Ingrid, from Dr. Ken Berry about these vegetable oils, which he argues are extremely bad for your health.
Yeah, well, I can completely understand. You know also that vegetarians emit, I think it's 60% more methane gas than meat eaters. So that's very unpleasant as well.
Too right. Which of the three of you would be willing to try one of these vegetarian sausages?
I'll try.
I love veggie sausages. I actually prefer them to ordinary sausages.
That's amazing. Well, in that case, I'm going to ask my brilliant floor manager, Sasha, to come in and actually distribute these sausages. So,
what
Sasha,
brand
when you
are
have
they,
a second,
though, Mark?
Liam, send Sasha in, and we're going to do...
It needs to be the right brand.
A live taste
because there are
of...
some horrible ones.
I'm a very multi-talented individual. I cook these myself in the GBNews microphone. So the brilliant Sasha is now going to distribute these. They've been cooked at the right temperature for, I think, 3.5 minutes. I mean, Nigella Lawson, eat your heart out. So I'm going to ask Sasha to pass those to your good selves. And whilst I do, Albie, it's obviously a big debate, isn't it, about what we feed our kids. The issue is we're in the grip of a childhood obesity epidemic, and I'm not sure taking fish fingers and burgers and steaks away from kids is going to help.
I'm good, thanks.
Well, if you're talking about childhood obesity, you just mentioned burgers there, which obviously aren't very healthy for children. I think, look, we've just got to really teach children to eat a balanced diet, and that might include some vegetarian sausages. It might include some ordinary bangers. It might include some fish. It might include some fish fingers. It might include, their 5 a day vegetables. There's just got to be a balanced diet. I'm not one of these people that's just anti-vegan and anti-vegetarian. I grew up with one of my very close friends was a vegetarian from youth, and she's not unwell. She's just as healthy as all of us. You've just got to eat a balanced diet. In countries like India, they've got a mainly plant-based diet. They're not all unhealthy. Arguably, a lot of them are healthier than us because of their food. So we've just got to be teaching balanced diets.
Yeah, and I think you're so right, Albie. It is all about balance. And that's why I'm not saying that kids have got to eat 3 steaks a day, but I'd like just that they had a mix at school. And the point is that actually, in terms of nutrition, very often, Georgia, the best and highest quality meal a child will get is at school. And that's why the school meal has got to be right.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many children, in this country that are in high levels of relative poverty. And as Albie was saying earlier, for some of these children, the reality is this is the best meal they're going to get for the whole day, for 5 days of the week. And also it's, during the time they're at school, it's going to help them with their learning. Kids find it hard to concentrate as it is. I know I do, and I'm 23 years old. So you definitely need to be eating, as good a diet as possible. I think for the vast majority of children and people, I think, meat's required. And I think for adults or teenagers or whoever who do make the decision to be vegetarian, they need to be sort of sensible with that and not just, eating pasta, which some people do.
Georgia was very wise and passed on the offer of one of my vegan sausages, but I saw you having a nibble, Ingrid. What's your verdict on the sausages?
Can I do what you did?
Yeah. Oh dear. OK, Albie, what do you think?
Not nice.
Albie looks quite happy. He's got a mouthful.
Like it?
He's really gone for it.
Yeah, but he's swallowing it down with fluid.
Wash down with a cup.
It's a bit dry.
A little bit dry.
I need a bit of ketchup with this, I think.
I don't eat normal sausages, so I wouldn't even be able to tell you the difference, to be honest. But they do not look appetising.
Albie, if you'd known, would you have known that was vegan?
Those actually weren't very nice, Mark.
Dear.
These aren't the sausages that I buy, no, definitely not.
No, I'm sure yours come from Harrods.
Look at the colour of them.
The Selfridges food hall. They're a funny colour as well, I've got to say.
Horrible colour. This is unnatural. This isn't...
That just looks like the ordinary colour of a cheap banger, doesn't it?
No, do you know what it looks like?
Maybe it's not cooked.
It looks like a yum-yum.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with sugar on top. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does, yeah,
I know
I
what they
can see
look like.
that.
Yeah, yellow yum, lemon yum-yum.
There you go. Well, welcome to Cookery Corner on Mark Dolan tonight. What are your thoughts about this? How do you feel about a primary school going plant-based? Is that a step in the right direction to save the planet? Or is it overreach by the school? Is it ultimately the choice of the parents what their child eats when they're small? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.uk. After this, we're going to have our big question. If Boris goes, does that threaten Brexit? And with my panel later this hour in the news agenda, are we unlocking too early? There are several commentators in today's Sunday papers who think we are. So lots to get through. Don't forget, we've got my Mark Meets guest at 10. I'm so excited. Internationally acclaimed US doctor Ken Berry, who argues that he's got the diet that could just about save your life. He's an interesting guy, and he tells his story at 10. Plus, we've got my alternative news headlines, a bit of satire at 10 as well, and my panel. So much to get through. See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On the school that went plant-based, strong opinions coming in. Steve has said the school's head should be removed from post for forcing her personal agenda onto the children. By all means, offer vegetarian options, but to force this on children is totally wrong. Jeff says, hi, Mark. If we had not eaten as omnivores during our early evolution, we would not have developed the large brains we now have. We would still be living in caves without the intelligence to progress. The brain is a large lump of fat. It requires feeding. So go vegan, go backwards. Go omnivore, progress. Well, Jeff, you've got quite the brain, let me tell you. Keep those emails coming. You know it's the best bit of my show. It's time now for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day. With pressure on the Prime Minister growing daily as a result of Partygate, should critics of Boris Johnson be careful what they wish for? The Prime Minister is committed to unlocking the country as quickly as possible. He's committed to levelling up. And of course, he is the historic Prime Minister that got Brexit done. So if he were to go, what would be the implications for our relationship with the EU? What would happen to the Northern Ireland Protocol, which places an invisible border down the Irish Sea? And might the very idea of Brexit itself be under threat if Boris went? Well, to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome Professor Anand Menon, who is the director of UK in a Changing Europe, and entrepreneur, commentator and former Brexit Party MEP, Ben Habib. Ben, if I could start with you, of course, you dreamed of seeing Brexit happen. It was delivered. But do you think the idea of Brexit is in peril if Boris goes?
Well, without wishing to be pedantic and difficult, Mark, actually Boris hasn't delivered Brexit. At a very basic level, Brexit was the country leaving the European Union as one united kingdom. And you mentioned yourself in your opener that actually we've left Northern Ireland to a significant extent behind in the European Union. We have a border down the Irish Sea. We've done something that no country has done in modern history, which is to partition itself, at least from a trade perspective, but also from a political perspective, right down the middle without a single shot being fired. Northern Ireland remains subject to swathes of EU law and subject to the European Court of Justice. We have not Brexited. So when people talk about Boris Johnson having got Brexit done, actually, it's a misrepresentation. And when they fear that our removal of Boris, if that's what the fear is, might give way to Brexit being reversed, they're wrong. He hasn't delivered it. Boris Johnson, for all his rhetoric, is actually not what any true Brexiteer would recognise as a Brexiteer.
However, Ben, might a replacement be a closet Remainer who will sell out to the EU, possibly by not challenging that damaging Northern Ireland Protocol?
Well, Boris isn't challenging it. For a year and a half now, Boris Johnson has been saying that he's going to make sure that that border down the Irish Sea isn't a problem. Since the G7 in June last year, he said he will not hesitate to invoke Article 16, which I'm sure by now viewers know is a mechanism within the protocol which allows the United Kingdom to suspend part or all of it, depending on the impact it's having. And he hasn't got the political conviction or will to actually deliver a Brexit. Boris Johnson is not the Brexiteer he has promoted himself to be. And like so many things in the Conservative Party manifesto, he's actually observed his Brexit promises in the breach. So I don't see Boris Johnson going as a big problem for Brexit. I think people like me who believe in Brexit, who believe in an independent United Kingdom, making its own laws across the entire British Isles, and having the ability to deregulate, lower taxes, and make policies for the benefit of the United Kingdom. He is not that Brexiteer. And his leaving will not be a threat, therefore, to people like us. We are going to have to go on fighting to deliver our Brexit.
So, Ben Habib, you're flipping this argument on its head. You're arguing get rid of Boris, potentially have a better Brexit.
Absolutely. Boris Johnson, when people say Boris Johnson is in contempt of Parliament because he's misrepresented the position of the various parties he's had in number 10, actually, he's in much more significant contempt of Parliament. Every time he gets up and he talks about the fact that he's got Brexit done, he is in contempt of Parliament. It's actually a contempt he's showing for the British people, because he made a solemn manifesto promise that the country would leave the European Union as one united kingdom. And he has fundamentally failed in that principle. There's a lot more, by the way, Mark, that's wrong with his Brexit deals. But that in itself is a fundamental flaw, which he has not put right, which he doesn't have the political will to put right, and I predict will not put right. He will not do it.
Professor Anand Menon, a privilege and a delight to have you on the show, Director of UK in a Changing Europe. What's your view about the implications of our relationship with the EU in the absence of Boris Johnson?
Well, to be honest, I mean, the basic thing is Brexit won't be under challenge whether Boris Johnson stays or goes. We're out, and that's the new normal. As Ben was hinting, the sort of Brexit we've got might change if we change Prime Minister. It might be that a Liz Truss in number 10 might be more deregulatory, might be more in favour of tearing up regulations than some of her possible opponents. What I don't buy is that any conceivable occupant of number 10 is simply going to turn around and tear up the Northern Ireland Protocol, simply because, A, it's an agreement we entered into willingly, and within that agreement it was perfectly clear that there would be a border, not too invisible actually for many traders across that border, across the Irish Sea, but B, if we do so, the danger we face is one of escalating disputes with the European Union at a time when we're facing rising inflation, a cost of living crisis. A trade war is probably not the best thing for the British economy at the moment.
So do you think, Professor, that if Boris Johnson were to stay, he would resolve some of these issues?
I don't think anything is going to get resolved in the near future, partly because we've got elections coming up in Northern Ireland in May, partly because, frankly, the Prime Minister is too politically weak to impose a solution. So I think this is going to drag and drag. And remember, even if he resorts to this famous Article 16, ultimately Article 16 means another couple of years of negotiation, of mediation, of arbitration. Nothing is going to happen quickly here. Both sides want a settlement, they just can't agree on what it is. And I think from the British point of view, dragging this out whilst making clear we're unhappy with it is a political strategy they seem to have settled upon.
However, didn't we, Professor Menon, play a game of chicken with the European Union during the Brexit negotiations under the leadership of Lord Frost? And we won that game. First of all, the awful backstop was removed from what was essentially a treaty, and they said it would never go. And a comprehensive free trade deal was achieved. Again, many said that was impossible. So perhaps if the UK talks tough on the Northern Ireland Protocol, we will once again prevail, especially if peace in Northern Ireland is at stake.
Well, there's several things there. Firstly, I would turn your logic on its head. The European Union far prefers the current protocol to the backstop that Theresa May negotiated, for the simple reason that that backstop gave the whole of the UK virtually unfettered access to the EU market, and the French, amongst others, were saying, hang on a sec, this is going to be unfair. They don't have to implement all our rules, but they can still trade with us. So I think amongst certain capitals, notably Paris, there was a bit of a sigh of relief when Boris Johnson's protocol replaced what Theresa May had got. And frankly, I mean, David Frost and Boris Johnson together got a deal. Depends who in the UK economy you talk to. If you talk to people who sell services to the European Union, they would turn around and say to you, well, look, this isn't much of a deal for us, it makes trading far, far more difficult than it was. Now, that's a sovereign choice we made. I would just dispute the notion that the EU have somehow been cowed. I think they've come away thinking this is great. We have access for goods where we have a trade surplus, and it's harder to trade services where the UK has a trade surplus.
Do you think, Ben Habib, if this Brexit that we've got is so compromised, was it worth it all along?
Well, it's a very, very good question you asked, Mark. And I was actually on Sophie Ridge during the general election of 2019, and I remember her eyes absolutely open wide when I said that the Prime Minister's deal was worse than Remain. And I think that what he has signed us up to is wretched. We have left part of our country behind. It's unheard of in history. And we have orientated ourselves around the European Union in fundamental matters of law, in state aid, employment law, the environment. We're signed up by international treaty to net zero by 2050. We have committed ourselves to European competition law. We can't deregulate employment law. We can't even buy British first at significant scale because of the deal the Prime Minister has done. And most importantly, and people will roll their eyes at the GDP impact of what I'm about to discuss, but most importantly, the Prime Minister traded on the votes that he got from the fishing community and those who support the fishing community. And he has sold them down the drain. Our fishing rights are left open in perpetuity to the European Union and most obviously to the French who fish our waters, you know, to their heart's delight and with impunity. The Prime Minister has not delivered a Brexit that any genuine Brexiteer would recognise. And the thing that would suit the United Kingdom best, for those of us who believe in a nimble, independent, deregulated, low-tax economy, is actually to tear up the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, repudiate the withdrawal agreement, put the border in Northern Ireland where it should go, where it has been, under the Good Friday Agreement for the last 100-odd years, and that is between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. There's a border there. There are different currencies on each side. There are different tax rates, different jurisdictions. It was no problem putting the customs border there, and it's a complete hijacking of the debate to suggest that peace in Northern Ireland would have been compromised by customs checks on that border. What we need is a British government with some courage that genuinely believes in our country, that genuinely believes it can govern the country properly, and to ditch the European Union, to cut the apron strings from the European, something that Boris Johnson repeatedly promised he would do and has singularly failed to deliver. We have not got Brexit. And so I don't fear Boris Johnson going. I would welcome him going because we have to reveal this misrepresentation that he has made to the British people. And even if we get Jeremy Hunt or another arch Remainer in office, we must go on fighting for that proper Brexit.
Ben Habib, is what you would consider a full-fat, a proper Brexit still within reach? And if so, who in the Conservative Parliamentary Party can deliver it?
Okay, is it in reach? It's very easily in reach. All we need is a Prime Minister with some courage, vision and planning. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. We've proven that we can lock the economy down for a couple of years and come through without significant damage. You think we can't deal with the adverse impact of what Anand calls a trade war with the EU? We've had a trade war with the EU since before the referendum in 2016. We are in a trade war with the EU. What we need is a government that's prepared to take the fight to the EU and not to be cowed by it. I do agree completely with Anand that the EU is not cowed by us. It is us that is cowed by the EU. Is there anyone in the Conservative Party who can deliver it? I don't think so. I think the Tory party is a broken party, and actually it needs a good kick in the shins to get a reality check so that those individuals who believe the way I do, that the United Kingdom can stand on its own 2 feet, be the independent, nimble, trading nation that it always was before it joined the European Union, so that those people can come to the fore and it can rid itself of the sort of 5th column of Remainers that it's infected by at the moment.
Can I just, for 1 nanosecond, defend the government, though, Ben, and argue that with this Brexit, we have a comprehensive free trade agreement. We've got control of our money, laws and borders. We've got an insurance policy against ever having the euro or having membership of a single European army. Ultimately, we're out. Isn't that a positive legacy?
Mark, we haven't got control of our borders. We've partitioned the United Kingdom. We get illegal immigrants coming across the North Sea regularly and frequently. We haven't
that hasn't got anything to do with Brexit, though, has it, Ben? That's got nothing to do with Brexit.
Well, the border down the Irish Sea has. We haven't got control of our laws. The Northern Ireland is subject to swathes of the European Union law, and we in the United Kingdom as a whole are orientated around state aid, competition, employment, and environmental laws as set by the EU. We haven't got laws, a control of laws. We haven't got control of our cash. We're still contributing billions to the EU, and we're still funding, by the way, European defence research. It's unbelievable. Most people don't know this,
Ben,
but we are committed.
Benjamin, you're an entrepreneur and an experienced politician as well, and you know how deals are done. And that Northern Ireland Protocol was actually agreed to with a heavy heart by the government, and it's what got the deadlock broken, and it's what got Brexit done. There wouldn't have been a deal without it.
But it's not. But Mark,
you're living in a fool's paradise, Ben. You're living the dream. You've been drinking the Brexit Kool-Aid.
What you're witnessing is a breakup of the United Kingdom engineered by the European Union and given into by the United Kingdom's government. Boris Johnson is going to be the Prime Minister. He is the Prime Minister that has set the ball rolling on the saltire of St. Patrick being removed from the Union Jack. That is going to be Boris Johnson's legacy. He still gets up in the Commons and he describes the protocol as a technical problem, as a problem generated by the European Union by over-interpreting the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's nothing of the sort. It is a significant constitutional issue that goes to the heart of the United Kingdom. The High Court in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, ruled that Article 6 of the Act of Union 1800 has been set aside by the protocol. In other words, we, as a United Kingdom, no longer exist. Just pause and think about that for a second. A High Court in Belfast has ruled that effectively the United Kingdom no longer exists because of the protocol. That's Boris Johnson's legacy. That is not Brexit. That is surrendering to the European Union.
Anand Menon, if Boris Johnson does go, how do you think the next Prime Minister will handle our relationship with the EU?
To be honest, I'm not sure there's going to be a whole load of difference, but can I, if I may, come back to some of the stuff that Ben was saying? Because while I have a degree of sympathy on the protocol is a big deal. The protocol creates a border within a sovereign state, and that's not the sort of thing we're used to seeing. But on the idea that you can simply stick a border between the north and south of Ireland, the police service of Northern Ireland, prior to the Brexit deal, warned graphically over and over again that border infrastructure on that border would lead to violence. On the idea that we can simply walk away, the fact of the matter is, if we walk away from a treaty commitment that we have signed up to, we will face the possibility of the European Union imposing tariffs on us for being in breach of our obligations, because the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, however much Ben doesn't like it, is an obligation that we entered into freely, that the government sold to Parliament and told the British people was the best deal available. Now, I fully understand that Ben doesn't like the deal, but simply tearing it up, simply walking away, is not, I don't think, the best way to ensure the kind of prosperity that I think we all hope for this country. We're in a difficult situation. The Brexit process has led to a lot of very, very difficult compromises. There's no doubt about that. But I think simply saying, well, look, we've changed our minds now, is going to make the situation more difficult rather than less so.
Yes, I mean, Anand, we'll come back to Ben in a minute, but I want to drill a little deeper in relation to the Northern Ireland Protocol. The bottom line is it's a headache for the UK, but it's a headache for the EU too, isn't it? Because they don't want to be the ones who are seen to be restarting the Troubles. And we know there are huge tensions within the unionist community in Northern Ireland about this border. And in the end, if we ignore the issue, these politicians will have blood on their hands.
Absolutely. The protocol is a nightmare for both sides. So whilst for us, Ben's illustrated quite nicely some of the problems that the government faces with the protocol. From the EU side, on the one hand, they're frustrated by the fact that we are not implementing all the protocol. On the other hand, as you quite rightly say, they don't want to be the ones who get heavy-handed because they don't want to inflame unionist opinion in Northern Ireland any further. We should be clear about this. It's a really, really tricky problem for both sides, and there isn't an obvious solution that will satisfy both sides.
Anand, I've got a suggested solution. I wonder whether the EU must accept that they cannot protect the integrity of the single market. And the reason why is that one member state left the union, except that that member state has a land border with an existing and ongoing member state, the Republic of Ireland. We would face the same issue if an independent Scotland sought to join the EU. Don't the EU just culturally and politically and economically have to accept that the single market will have to do one?
No, I don't think so. Now, first, let me deal with the point with Scotland. With Scotland, I don't think there's any ambiguity. If Scotland became independent and joined the European Union, the EU would impose an external customs and regulatory border between Scotland and England. There would be none of the negotiations or ambiguity around Northern Ireland because they would not see Scotland as a special case in the way that both sides have decided to treat Northern Ireland, which is why we've ended up with this weird fudge of a protocol. As for the single market, it's easy for us here to sit here and say, yeah, forget about the integrity of the single market, you're going to have to live with it. Try convincing governments in France, in Spain, in Belgium, that a market that they're part of is going to have an open border into which goods that are produced with conceivably lower standards, with conceivably UK government help, can just go into their market without help. I think they'll turn around very, very quickly and say, no, that's not happening.
Anand, very briefly, the clock's against us. How do you see this issue over the protocol playing out? Do you think it will be resolved by the next election?
Possibly. I mean, it's quite conceivable. We're neck deep in Article 16 mediation by the time of the next election. But in the short term, a lot is going to hinge on the future of the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister survives the Met inquiry and the local elections and comes back from that, my guess is that at some point in early summer, there's going to be serious consideration in Downing Street of triggering Article 16 just to give the impression of moving this process forward.
And of course, with that bring significant implications, as you've argued. Ben, final thoughts on this. Anand has said that any Prime Minister would be mad to tear up the protocol.
Well, any Prime Minister would have been mad to have signed it. There is a border already between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And it gave the impression that we'd be imposing a new border. The threat of violence comes from the Republic and from Sinn Féin and from the IRA, or whatever's left of them. The threat of violence never came from unionists. That's why our government got weak at the knees and put the border down the Irish Sea. The reality is the Good Friday Agreement, the Belfast Agreement, recognises the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. That's where the customs checks should go. But just to say, one last thing, Mark. The British government has repeatedly said it would not impose checks on goods coming from the European Union, from the Republic into Northern Ireland, nor do we currently impose checks on goods coming from the Republic of Ireland via Northern Ireland across the Irish border. It is the European Union that would impose those checks. It is the European Union that would impose customs facilities at that border. It is them that would encourage any IRA or Sinn Féin promoted violence. It is not the British government. What the British government needs to do is to call that bluff, to stick with the integrity of the United Kingdom, to stick to the Good Friday Agreement, and recognise that customs checks, to the extent that any are necessary, if any are necessary, and by the way, the trade across that border is what Anand and I would both regard as a rounding error in total trade between the United Kingdom and the EU, whether any custom checks are necessary. I would argue they're not. The European Union needs to get realistic, it needs to back off, and our government needs to grow some courage, grow a backbone, and tell the European Union to sling their hook.
That's a very curious way of taking back control of borders, Ben, though, isn't it, at best, to say we've taken back control of our borders, so we're not going to control them at all.
Well, Anand, you said that the single market would need protection. It's up to the EU to protect their single market. It's not for us to protect it. There is €5 billion worth of goods that goes across that border. That's less than 1% of the 650 billion that goes between the UK and the EU. It is a rounding error. It doesn't matter. If the peace process is promoted by not having checks, so be it. We're an incredibly pragmatic nation, and we've been too pragmatic and too generous for the European Union. We should recognise the border where the Good Friday Agreement recognised, where it's been since 1920, between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And to the extent that the EU wishes to impose customs checks there, they can do it to their heart's content, and they can answer to Sinn Féin. They can answer to the peace process, not the British people, not the British government.
Gentlemen, my deep thanks to both of you for your time. Professor Anand Menon is the director of UK in a Changing Europe. And my thanks to entrepreneur, commentator and former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib. Now, we've been asking your views about this. Would sacking Boris Johnson put Brexit at risk? Well, 52% say yes. 48% say no. That's right. 52% say Brexit under threat if Boris goes. 48% say no. Do get your emails in, mark@gbnews.uk, and get your questions in to Dr. Ken Berry, who is a world-famous US nutrition expert. He's a doctor, he's a GP, and he's changed the world with a book called Lies My Doctor Told Me. Hear his amazing story at 10. And next in the news agenda, are we unlocking the country too soon? We'll discuss that after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A big reaction to our big question. Richard has said on Brexit, brilliant debate on Brexit, Johnson must go. How about this from Daisy? Dear Mark, I'm very impressed with Anand Menon. Agree with everything he says. He's direct and concise, whereas his opponent, Ben, is far too opinionated, emotional and hogged approximately 3/4 of that debate. Well, Daisy, I did direct a lot of questions in Ben's favour, so I guess that's my responsibility, but thanks for pointing it out. Also, Annie, who says, Dear Mark, why don't we just send goods to Northern Ireland by drone? EU are just being difficult because the UK left and they lost their cash cow. Annie, thank you for that. Keep your emails coming. You know I love hearing from you. It's time now to react to the big news stories of the day with my wonderful panel, journalist and broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, and another good friend of the show, political journalist Georgia Gilholey. After 2 years of liberty-affronting COVID restrictions, 3 pointless and damaging lockdowns, just in my opinion, mask mandates, muzzling the nation, and the general doom and gloom, well, the end of restrictions is finally in. Boris is expected to publish the government's Living with COVID strategy on the 24th of February as he scraps almost all restrictions, including the legal requirement to self-isolate. But are we unlocking too soon? Will Hutton asks that very question in The Observer today. He writes, this short-sighted mad dash exit from the pandemic mirrors its beginning, a painful refusal to accept that human beings benefit from the group acting together, especially in matters of public health. Well, is Will Hutton right? Has this decision to unlock been made too quickly? What do you think, Georgia?
I think it's been made far too slowly. I think that you can see during the initial sort of madness, really, of the early pandemic, not really knowing what was going to happen, not really knowing how dangerous the virus was, why some of these decisions were made. But it is quite interesting how immediately the Western world and the rest of the world sort of jumped on the bandwagon of China's approach of locking down people, making people stay in their homes. It's absolutely unprecedented, you know, to sort of force healthy people to do that within, you know, recent history or history in general.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, really it's scandalous that it took so long to do this.
Albie, do you think Boris has got the timing right, or is Will Hutton right that we may pay the price for this?
I actually think the Prime Minister's got the timing exactly right, actually. You know, we had the really successful booster rollout over Christmas. Everyone got their offer to get their jab. I think it was before the New Year, which is fantastic. We're seeing levels of hospitalisations really low, deaths are really low. And so I think it's probably the right time to open up. And actually, in this article in The Observer, one of the things that I really don't like is this attack on Tory libertarians, like that's some sort of slur.
Yeah.
You know, it's because of the good men and women of the COVID recovery group that we didn't go into lockdown over Christmas, because they made it politically difficult for Boris to implement that kind of thing. I fully believe, had they not done that rebellion, we would have been in lockdown over Christmas. So it's not a slur to be a Tory libertarian.
No, briefly, Ingrid, why is freedom a four-letter word?
That is a big, good question. You're asking the wrong person really here, just generally about this question, because I was completely against any form of lockdown from the beginning. So in my mind, you know, this could not have come soon enough. But, yeah, why is free...
Some people don't want this to end, do they?
No, they don't. But, you know, I do wonder if it's become the comfort blanket. People have got used to it. You know, I'm all for herd immunity, but we've got herd mentality instead.
Wow,
as a
what a
result
great description. Yeah, that's a zinger of a line, and I can't disagree. But what is your view, Mark at GBNews.uk? Do keep your opinions coming. Really excited because my Mark Meets guest at 10 o'clock in just a couple of minutes' time is Dr. Ken Berry, a world-famous US physician. And he's written a book called Lies My Doctor Told Me. And he'll talk about weight loss and possibly even reversing type 2 diabetes. If you've got questions for one of the most respected doctors in the world, go to mark at gbnews.uk. And don't forget, more of my rather satirical news headlines after 10. My alternative news headlines, celebrities, look out. See you shortly.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking grey and damp for many. But there could be some early brightness in the southeast. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be a cloudy start in the southwest with some outbreaks of light rain on Monday morning. A frost-free start, but feeling chilly in the breeze. Across the southeast, it should be drier, with a few brighter spells to start the day. A much wetter picture in Wales, though, where persistent rain is likely. It's been a wet few days in Wales, so there's likely to be a lot of spray on the roads. Wetter weather also extends into northwest England, with some heavy downpours in places. A gloomy and wet start is likely for the northeast, with some brisk winds towards the coast. There'll be showers in Scotland instead of persistent rain, and perhaps a few brighter spells in between. However, skies will be cloudy for many. Sunshine and showers is the picture across Belfast. Some of the showers will be heavy, so you'll want an umbrella when you head out first thing. Showers and longer spells of rain will continue across the UK on Monday, but there should be a few glimmers of sunshine too. And that's how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Has Boris got the timing right in terms of unlocking the country? Well, Patrick says, dear Mark, we should never have locked down. This has been a global coup d'etat. Strong views there from Patrick. How about this from Malcolm? You say Boris has ended all restrictions. This is not the case. Unjabbed with natural immunity like me cannot get back to the UK without restrictions. Jackie, hi Mark, I think freedom from all restrictions can't come soon enough. I'm in the vulnerable category. And subsequently, I have all my jabs. Going forward for me, there will be no more jabs and absolutely no more useless masks. I want my life back. Jackie, thank you for that. Keep the emails coming. Don't forget, on the other side of the news, we've got an action-packed hour. Tomorrow's front pages in Headliners from 11. In the news agenda, should we have sent any athletes to China's calamitous Winter Olympics? Plus, how do you combat loneliness in later life? Is it harder to make friends as you get older? And don't forget, I'll be joined by the world-famous US doctor, Dr. Ken Berry, the author of Lies My Doctor Told Me. That conversation might just change your life. It might save your life, and it will certainly help you drop a few pounds. So we'll talk about health, nutrition, weight loss, and much more. And don't forget, we've also got my alternative news headlines. But first, the far more reliable Miranda Shunker.
Thank you. The top stories this hour from the GB newsroom. US President Joe Biden has spoken to his Ukrainian counterpart today in a concerted bid to de-escalate the growing crisis with Russia. The two leaders agreed by phone to continue pursuing diplomacy and deterrence, although President Biden made it clear the US would respond swiftly to any incursion by Russia. The Ukrainian government has allocated more than £400 million to keep its airspace open after several airlines have started to review its flights into the country. While Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby told US media Russia was continuing to amass troops at the border.
He continues to add force capability, well over 100,000 right now, and actually over the last few days even more. And number two, I think a mosaic of the intelligence that we're seeing. Not speaking to it specifically, but you know, we have good sources of intelligence, and they're telling us that you know, that things are sort of building now to some sort of crescendo opportunity.
Well, the government must learn from last year's Afghanistan evacuation if Russia is to invade Ukraine. That's according to Labour's shadow Foreign Secretary. David Lammy is calling for phone lines to be staffed 24/7 and extra resources to process visas to help people leave the country quickly. Meanwhile, he's written to the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss saying the Labour Party is united with the government over Russian aggression. A group of senior Tory MPs and peers are calling on Boris Johnson to reverse the government's ban on fracking to help deal with the UK's energy crisis. In a joint letter to the Prime Minister, Lord Frost and around 29 other Conservatives said it's time to reverse this moratorium. The shale gas mining ban came into effect in 2019 after 2 minor earthquakes in Lancashire. Police have moved in to clear the remaining protesters near North America's busiest land border crossing, the Ambassador Bridge in Canada. Demonstrators opposing vaccine mandates had occupied the bridge for 5 days, slowing trade and prompting President Biden to call for an end to the siege. Now, when it comes to financial compensation, it can often help to relieve the damage done. So 74 Northern Power customers must have been thrilled when they were sent cheques worth £2.3 trillion each. One customer tweeted an image of the bumper payout received following power cuts during Storm Arwen last November, although he did ask if the company was sure they could afford it. The cheques were swiftly cancelled and the corrected amounts, albeit smaller, are said to be in the post with an apology. Well, on TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now let's get straight back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Isn't Miranda fabulous? She returns in an hour's time. It's time now for your alternative news headlines. And let's start with this. Couples in Thailand have been told by the authorities to wear a face covering whilst having sex, according to this article in the Mail newspaper. That's right, cover your face during sex. I'll be honest, that's nothing. Mrs. Dolan usually asks me to cover the whole of my face. In fact, this little fella has come in very handy over the years. Talk about hard left. Jez we can. British farmers are to be given government tips on how to be less rude, according to The Times. Yelling "get off my land" at walkers is no longer acceptable under new rules. Farmers should instead use friendly language on signs. And if visitors trespass, they should ask them if they're lost and help them to get back to the path. However, it's feared not all members of the farming community will be willing to show their caring side. Ouch. Now David and Victoria Beckham are back in the news. Their £31.5 million London townhouse needs urgent structural repairs to stop parts of the building collapsing. Apparently the house is at its most vulnerable when they slam doors, run up the stairs, and when Victoria sings in the shower. Broken glass everywhere. The Hollywood actress Nicole Kidman has been nominated for an Oscar for her portrayal of the comedian Lucille Ball in her new movie, Being the Ricardos. It's hard to know whether the well-maintained actress was surprised by the news because her face doesn't do surprised anymore. Down under now, and New Zealand authorities have been blasting out the music of Barry Manilow to flush out hundreds of Freedom Convoy protesters gathered outside Parliament. And they're, of course, arguing about strict vaccine rules. Now, if that doesn't work, the authorities are going to try water cannons, rubber bullets, and if all else fails, the solo work of Paul McCartney. The Mail newspaper have treated us to a glimpse inside Vladimir Putin's £73 million super yacht. It's a 270-foot vessel with a helipad and a swimming pool that turns into a dance floor. I've got to say, this is very inspiring. It just goes to show what hard work, prudent savings, and stealing the natural resources of an entire country can buy you. Ship ahoy. Now, the good news for Putin is that he's already chosen his outfit for the boat. So fetching. A massage therapist has complained that Prince Andrew was her creepiest customer, alleging that he often made lewd remarks of a sexual nature. I was quite shocked reading this because up till now he seemed like such a great guy. How wrong I was. And finally, the Prime Minister's reshuffle this week has been criticised for being male-dominated. It's being called a he-shuffle. Well, here at Mark Dolan tonight, we thought the government should spin this in a positive way, showing how progressive they are. Perhaps many of those cabinet figures simply identify as females. For example, Michaela Gove. Isn't she gorgeous? Dominique Raab. What a babe. Janet Rees-Mogg. Oh, she'd be good with the filing, wouldn't she? Or how about Doris Johnson? Yes, please. And those are your alternative news headlines. It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, business, sport and beyond, as well as those who simply have a big story to tell. Tonight, let's meet the world-famous medic who is breaking all the rules. Dr. Ken Berry is the author of the best-selling book, Lies My Doctor Told Me. Based upon the ideas in this book, Ken has transformed the health and waistline of his patients and thousands of his followers around the world by recommending the elimination of sugar, vegetable oil, and grains from the diet. Ken Berry has a massive following on his YouTube channel, which gets hundreds of thousands of views, and he's an evangelical proponent of real food and what he calls the proper human diet. Ken Berry is a board-certified family doctor and a fellow in the American Academy of Family Physicians, and has been practicing family medicine in rural Tennessee for over a decade and has seen over 20,000 patients in his career so far. So what is the secret to optimum health? How can we lose weight and even reverse type 2 diabetes? And what are those lies our doctors have been telling us? Dr. Ken Berry, welcome to GB News.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
Well, you're very welcome. I've been watching your videos with fascination and I've read the book. Now, your approach to lifestyle and nutrition comes from your own personal journey, doesn't it?
It sure does. At my worst, I weighed 297 pounds and was pre-diabetic and was miserable with a whole list of other medical problems.
So, as a doctor, surely you had the answer. You just had to follow what you'd been taught at medical school.
Well, I actually tried that and tried to follow the American Diabetes Association diet since I was becoming a type 2 diabetic, and I actually got fatter and sicker by following those guidelines. And it was that at that point I said, something's wrong here. We've lost the plot. And I started doing some independent research. And my YouTube channel is the culmination of what I discovered during that research.
So it was what you learned to make yourself better that you went on to teach your patients?
Exactly. And such things as cutting all sugar out of the diet, including fruit juices and too many fruits, cutting all grains out of the diet, including wheat, rice, oats, corn, millet, amaranth, quinoa. All that is too high in carbohydrates and too inflammatory for most people. Cutting all vegetable oils out of the diet, soybean, canola, sunflower, safflower, all of those things are inflammatory and cause people problems. Eating a lot more red meat, fatty red meat, and eggs with the yolks tends to help people lose weight, tends to help people reverse type 2 diabetes or prediabetes or metabolic syndrome or hypertension or fatty liver. All of those things get better when you follow what I have come to call a proper human diet.
Now, Dr. Ken Berry, I've just read your CV, as it were. You're an extremely experienced physician. You're no quack doctor. And actually, what you're talking about in the book is echoed by the likes of Dr. Michael Mosley here in this country with the Fast 800 diet, which is very much a low carbohydrate protocol, which incorporates intermittent fasting that we'll come to, of which I know you're an exponent. We also have Dr. David Unwin, an NHS GP, in rural England who's been getting his patients their type 2 diabetes reversed with exactly the methods that you extol. However, just to balance it out, you, David Unwin, Michael Mosley, you are in the minority in the medical community. Surely that many doctors can't be wrong.
Well, if you look at the epidemics of overweight and obesity, of type 2 diabetes, of fatty liver, of metabolic syndrome and hypertension, perhaps all of those doctors were wrong, because most people try to follow their doctor's advice and it doesn't seem to be working. But the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands, and quickly approaching the millions of people who follow my advice and Dr. Unwin's advice, who is a great resource in the UK. He has a great Twitter feed and he has excellent videos on YouTube. By following our advice, you actually reverse all of these chronic conditions, including type 2 diabetes, which any doctor will tell you is chronic and progressive and not reversible. But Dr. Unwin and I have had tens of thousands of patients and YouTube watchers who have reversed their type 2 diabetes completely by following the simple principles of a proper human diet.
Yeah, so I think we don't have to debate the rights and wrongs of sugar, do we? Most people with half a brain cell know that sugar is not great for you. So let's just take that as read, that we should eliminate sugar from our diet. I've never met a doctor that thinks sugar's good for you. But why are these other carbohydrates a problem? The so-called healthy whole grains, you know, your brown bread, your short grain rice, and other such sort of fiber-rich carbohydrates. Why are they a problem too? What do they do to the body?
So definitely whole grains are less bad than highly processed grains, but they're still, for the average person who's overweight, obese, morbidly obese, type 2 diabetic, has fatty liver, they're still far too high in carbohydrates. All carbohydrates, without exception, break down into sugar. And that sugar causes a blood glucose spike, which in turn causes a serum insulin spike, which turns off your ability to burn fat, whether that fat is stored in your liver or on your belly or your bum or your thighs.
Okay, let's go to vegetable oils now. These are these very processed seed oils, such as sunflower oil, and what else have we got? Rapeseed oil, of course, soybean oil. Why are these oils bad? Because we've been told by doctors that they're heart healthy.
Yes. And so they're free of saturated fat, and they're definitely free of animal fats. And I think that's why most doctors condone or even recommend the vegetable seed oils, but they're very, very high in omega-6 fatty acids, which more and more research, and actually some research has been on the books for decades, showing that when you replace animal fats with vegetable seed oils, corn oil, canola oil, sunflower, safflower, you actually increase the levels of inflammation in the human body. You increase the risk of cancer. And in many cases, people seem to fatten easier eating a diet rich in vegetable oils and the new plant butter that is becoming very popular to talk about. We don't call it margarine anymore in the United States. We call it plant butter, but it definitely is not butter, and it is a bastardization of that word to even call it that.
Now, you mentioned red meat. I think in the book you talk about bacon. You mentioned eating eggs, including the egg yolk. What about saturated fat? Because it's been the predominant view since the 70s that saturated fat is linked to heart disease. Do you not worry the recommendations of your book might give people a heart attack?
I don't worry about that at all for several reasons. Number one, all of the research that proves that saturated fat leads to heart disease, heart attack, and stroke is actually observational research, which doesn't prove anything. At best, it can show a very weak possible association, but it can never show causation. I've searched the literature thoroughly, and there is not a single controlled research study in human beings that shows that eating saturated fat causes heart disease or diabetes or obesity or any other thing. In fact, there are 3 randomized controlled trials in human beings showing that replacing animal fat with vegetable oil, corn oil in these cases, actually led to an increase in cancer, an increase in all-cause mortality, and an increase in plaquing of the coronary arteries. My YouTube video about red meat, I actually have the citations for those 3 studies in the show notes, one of which was the Sydney Heart Study.
Now, in the book, you write about inflammation, and that inflammation is one of the key factors in heart disease, not saturated fat, but inflamed arteries as a result of diet. So what food is causing that inflammation, and what's the mechanism by which it's so damaging to us?
So one of the big problems with nutritional research is that the plant-based avoid animal saturated fat paradigm has been so popular for the last few decades that no meaningful research has been done on this, right? But what we know without a doubt when we look at the paleoanthropological evidence is that human beings have been super carnivores, which means 70% of their food came from fatty ruminant animals for over 2 million years. This is not up for debate when you talk to a paleoanthropologist. They know this. This is commonly cited in the literature. And so we've had this fad over the last few decades to demonize animal fat, saturated fat, and to hold vegetable seed oils up on a platform saying that this is the heart healthy way to eat. But the problem with the vegetable oils is they're very high in omega-6 fatty acids and very low in omega-3 fatty acids. They are very often rancid, very often oxidized, and they do oxidize rapidly when you cook with them. And so you wind up with inflammation in the lining of your arteries, and that causes damage. And then your body tries to correct or repair that damage, and it uses cholesterol as kind of a spackle or a bonding agent to repair that damage, so that when we go in and do an autopsy and we look at these arteries in the heart or elsewhere, we see this cholesterol buildup and we think, oh my God, there you go. That proves that cholesterol caused this. But that's not true at all. The cholesterol being present in the plaques is actually your body's attempt to try to correct the damage done by the inflammation and oxidation caused by the vegetable seed oils and the high carbohydrate diet that's recommended by everyone, including the NHS in their Eat Well guidelines. I was looking at that today. 5 a day, fruits and veg, but everybody's going to eat 5 servings of fruits because they like those better than veg, right? Base every meal on starchy foods like pasta and like rice, like grains. This is terrible advice, and indeed following this advice is what is causing the epidemics of obesity and type 2 diabetes in modern society.
Now, I spoke to a leading NHS heart surgeon on this programme last year, and I put your hypothesis to him about the idea that inflammation is the key factor in heart disease and that saturated fat is not an exclusive cause for concern. And he said, well, some people believe or did believe that the Earth is flat. So he compared the likes of yourself, David Unwin and others, to flat earthers. Have you come to blow with other doctors in health services around the world? Have you had arguments with doctors?
Well, very often we have Twitter slap fights. And I think the flat earth analogy is very apt in this situation. But I think as the years and the decades go on, we will find that it's the other side who was guilty of believing in a flat earth, not Dr. Unwin and I. But time will tell. We'll see how it turns out in the wash.
Well, look, I've got a big audience on this show, and they're keen to get your pearls of wisdom, Dr. Berry. Obviously, they should run out and buy a copy of Lies My Doctor Told Me, and they should look at your very entertaining and informative videos on YouTube. But just getting to brass tacks, if I've got people watching this who'd like to lose weight or possibly send their type 2 diabetes into remission, what does a good day of eating look like in your view?
Well, step one would be to ignore the NHS Eat Well guidelines. I would ignore those completely. I would start my day with bacon and eggs or steak and eggs. And I would start that meal as late in the day as possible so you extend your intermittent fast, because you've already fasted 8 hours during your sleep time, right? So extend that out to noon if you can, and then break your fast with steak and eggs or bacon and eggs or just eggs and eggs. And then when you have a second meal of the day, maybe 6 hours later, because you will not need a snack in 2 hours if you eat that much healthy fat and healthy protein, you will be full and satiated for many hours. And then you can have a second meal in the day, which can be a big portion of fatty meat, more eggs. You can have a little bit of low carbohydrate veg, leafy green veg, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus. And then that's it. You're done. You're full, you're happy, you're satiated. You've eaten a very nutrient dense diet over the course of the day, and you've eaten enough healthy fat and healthy protein that you'll be able to fast with no problems until you break your fast the next day around noon once again. And it's very simple. It's very inexpensive. It does not have to be expensive in any way. And what you'll start to notice within a very few days is that as your insulin level returns to normal, you'll start to urinate away anywhere from 5 to 15 pounds of unhealthy fluid that you've been storing on your body. Immediately, your blood pressure will start to come down, your blood sugar will start to come down, and you'll start to feel better. And as you can repeat this each day, you're going to notice that the scale starts to move in a very positive direction. We've had many people reach out from the UK who have lost multiple stone of weight, and they couldn't be happier with this very nutritious, very sustainable way of eating, because ultimately what the NHS Eat Well guidelines for people with or without diabetes, what it amounts to is a lifetime of a semi-starvation diet. You have to starve yourself for the rest of your life to lose the weight and then to maintain that weight loss. Who has the willpower to starve themselves for the rest of their life? I do not, and I suspect you do not either. And obviously the average person cannot sustain that for more than a few months, and then they gain all the weight back when they splurge. Why not instead eat a proper human diet that human beings have been eating for over 2 million years, full of fatty meat and eggs, a little bit of veg, a few nuts, and a few berries for dessert? It's called a proper human diet, and I think that it will work better than the NHS Eat Well diet if you give it a 90-day try.
Ken, great to have you on the show. I look forward to catching up again in the near future. Dr. Ken Berry can be found on YouTube. Do subscribe to his channel for his videos. And his book is called Lies My Doctor Told Me. Now, the bottom line is that if you're concerned about your health, any of those symptoms we talked about, blood pressure, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, do consult your doctor and do talk to your doctor if you're considering changing your diet. Remember, GP knows best. So brilliant stuff. Have you tried something like Ken Berry's approach? Let me know if it's been successful for you. Mark at gbnews.uk. Lots more to come, including in my news agenda, with energy bills going through the roof, mortgage rates soaring and a tax hike on the way. What are your saving hacks? How do you save money? We'll get reaction from my panel to that. So let me know how you save cash. Mark at gbnews.uk. We've also got another great British game show as well. So much to get through. Headliners after 11. See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Big reaction to my interview with Dr. Ken Berry. I've got to say, full disclosure, I think it was 2018, I gave up sugar and those processed carbohydrates, lost 3 stone. It was a game changer for me. So I've certainly benefited from the kind of stuff that Ken Berry was talking about. But what's your experience been? Lots of emails coming in on this. Dear Mark, and this is from SJLJ Jackson. Thank goodness for Mark Dolan. Oh, well, bless you for that. But I'm not sure many people think that. But for having Ken Berry on the show. More of this kind of information, please. It's not being heard on other TV channels. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Welcome to GB News. Everyone should be keen to improve their metabolic health, and he tells us how to do it. I'll be showing everyone this interview. Well, thank you so much for that. I think that's Lynn and Steve. Thank you, guys. Jeff says, Mark, at last, sense from your American doctor. I only eat 1 meal a day. I ignore the NHS diet. I used to run miles every day. Great interview. Well done, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Hi, Mark. But I believe Dr. Berry. I've been following his and similar diets for about 7 years. Lost weight, corrected autoimmune issues, and feel much healthier now. Stephen, congratulations on that. Derek says, hi, Mark. That doctor should team up with Mary Berry. What a diet recipe book that would be. What a great thought, Derek, although I think they probably would disagree about sugar and flour, but I get your point. And how about this from Bill, who says, hi, Mark. Your guest, Dr. Berry, is on another planet. So there you go. It's all about opinions. That's what this show's about. And of course, that's what GB News is all about. Let's crack on now, reacting to the big stories of the day with my brilliant panel of broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona, and journalist and contributor to Young Voices UK, Georgia Gilholey. China's calamitous Olympic Games took another bizarre turn for the worst today, as events were delayed because of an outbreak of real snow. Among the many criticisms of these games has been the reliance on 100% fake snow, as the region typically receives less annual snowfall than London. But a rare Beijing blizzard meant several ski events were postponed, while most training runs were cancelled because the courses were deemed unsafe. China's hosting of the Games has been widely criticised due to the country's checkered human rights record, including the persecution of the Uyghur Muslim community, the crushing of freedom in Hong Kong, and let's not forget their lack of transparency in finding the source of COVID-19. Athletes have also made a litany of complaints about the inhumane hotel quarantine conditions, the lack of hot food, and perilously cold mountain temperatures. Plus, their doping system has been called into question after 15-year-old Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva tested positive for a banned substance. So what do we think about this? The Games are shrouded in controversy. Do you think, actually, in any sense, Georgia, that our athletes should be there?
I totally understand why individual athletes who, of course, spend their lives, training for these kind of events, wish to participate. However, I find myself seeing very stark parallels between the Olympic Games in 1936 in Berlin. I think the Chinese human rights record, the Chinese government's, that is absolutely aberrant. They're not just committing corruption like many other nations do, they're committing a genocide against the Uyghur Muslims and other Turkic minorities. These are thousands upon thousands of people who are trapped in camps, having their organs forcibly harvested, being forcibly sterilised. This is not a country that should be allowed a platform like the Winter Games to project this fantasy of what they are. The thing is, everyone knows that it's not true, but within the country, people face censorship. They can't even buy tickets to the Games. You hear about foreign journalists. I believe it was a journalist for The Times who's reporting from the Winter Games. he's had to have his phone taken off him because he knows it's going to be hacked, for example, if he takes it with him to China. This is not a situation that should be happening. I think the problem is that the IOC, who organised the Olympics, they obviously just needed it to be somewhere because of COVID. A lot of places were pulling out of this Games. It wasn't a Games that sort of people were fighting over. So I think that's why it ended up being in Beijing this time. And you can see, for example, I'm not expert on snow sports, but you can see this is not the appropriate location, even if it did have, a stellar human rights record. To be having these kind of games, it just looks a bit ridiculous, to be honest.
And aren't we, Ingrid, legitimising this regime by sending our athletes?
It's terrible. The sad thing is, in sport, it should be apolitical. But, it's gone on and on, like Berlin, Montreal, New Zealand, all those places. It's become so politicised, and it's such a shame because, yes, for these athletes and the skiers that have just trained, they've put their heart and soul into it. They've invested so much of their time to come back, proudly with their medals. And then this awful, we have to accept, I suppose, that sports now is going to be, it's like the Eurovision Song Contest, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so completely political. But this is so wrong. It's just flying in the face of everything that I am against, and we're all against. We're all agreed with that. And especially with the COVID. I mean, it's ironic that it's them hosting it. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's a sick joke, really, isn't it? It's a real sting in the tail that we've got to attend this event, bring our dignitaries. And this is the epicentre. No, the dignitaries didn't come. You're quite right. I stand corrected.
They boycotted it in that way. There's quite a few. There's America, us, Australia, Latvia, Finland. Quite a few.
But how do we end up with a Winter Olympics in a place where it doesn't snow?
Anyway,
I mean, I agree with everything that you've just said, but that's just like
I think Norway withdrew.
It's just bizarre.
I believe it was Norway that withdrew. Because I think they were one of the only places that were competing for this specific thing when it came to the end of it. But I totally agree with you. I mean,
it's just the Winter Olympics should happen somewhere where there's snow. It shouldn't rely on 100% fake snow.
Like an international football tournament in Doha.
Exactly, where it's too hot to play for most of the day. And, of course, they've also got an awful human rights record there as well.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think the answer is? In the end, we don't want the athletes to suffer. They've trained for years for this moment. And I think it would be a shame to use them as political pawns.
Yes.
But there has to be some comeuppance for the Chinese regime, doesn't it, in the long term, notwithstanding the Winter Olympics. How do we send a message to China that how they've behaved in the last 2 years is not acceptable?
I think that is a really big and difficult question, Mark, because China is a very influential and powerful country. It's got a lot of strategic industries that the rest of the world is reliant on. We've got all of these value chains for semiconductors, for example, which are all tied up with China. So we can't really disentangle China from the global economy, because if we put, trade sanctions on China, prices here will go up.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult... I honestly don't know the answer to the question. It's
other than perhaps the West uniting against China, that we must come together.
But honestly, I don't know if that would have any meaningful impact on China, would it? We've all condemned them for the Uyghur Muslims, for example. That's not changed, has it?
No.
This is a country of 1 billion people. They have a completely different political system to us. They don't care about liberty. They don't care about democracy.
But they're
doing their own thing.
But they do care very much about economy. That's it. I mean, in a way, a lot of people were saying that this COVID thing was absolutely perfect because they just came out of it 2 weeks later while the rest of the world went into lockdown. Their factories were open, so everybody depended on them, or PPE equipment and stuff like that. So economy, yes, and I think that you're right. I think if the rest of the world... put that in context with the rest of the world. If we stop buying from China, everything we buy comes from China. We've got to stop doing that. OK, prices will go up, I agree. But actually, mass production will bring the prices down if it's not in China. I do think we should do that. I feel really strongly about that. We've got it's cheap stuff that they're using as well. Cheap stuff. I'm doing an upholstery course, and you have all these...
really?
I know. Look, I'm in a terrible state. I am really...
You look great.
No, well, no, my hands don't. But the needles and things...
I thought you were a bare-knuckle fighter or something.
Yeah, I know. It looks like that. They snap. They're made in China because it's cheap steel. It's not quality. We've got the industries. We can get them going again, get them moving. I agree with you. Whole of the world unite. We start manufacturing, and then off they go. That's all they're worried about.
What do you
economy.
think, Georgia? Do you think China can be punished? Do we have any leverage?
It depends what you mean by
against them?
punishment. I think we should certainly be looking to decouple ourselves in any way we can. I think that the idea was sort of tabled by the government last year. It's not really been implemented yet, that we would apply sort of legal sanctions on companies that are found to be using Uyghur forced labour and other forced labour in China. But we see this week it's been leaked that a government department has been using PPE or awarding PPE contracts to companies that have links to Uyghur forced labour. So the problem is that some of these things are obvious, it's how you do it, but there's just absolutely no will to do it within the government. And you actually see reports this week from Politico and The Independent that Boris Johnson himself personally is actually looking to pursue an actual trade deal with China. So I think you're totally right. We can't completely disentangle ourselves from China in the global economy. That's not going to happen. But we certainly shouldn't be seeking to be closer, and we should be forcing legal sanctions onto Western corporations in particular who are complicit in this. And, personally, it's not just about the government. It's please don't buy from places that are using people to work for them to make this cheap cloth or whatever, that are using forced labour, that are imprisoning people, because it's not acceptable.
Buy British, buy American, dare I say it, buy European. Well, look, let's get to our next story. A mother of three has sparked an online discussion after taking to parenting website Mumsnet, to which, I'll be honest, I'm addicted, seeking advice on friendship. Am I even allowed to read it? Who knew? She opened up online and explained her difficulty finding friends in her 40s. The lonely mum blamed moving areas frequently, not being able to sustain friendships and finding it stressful to make new connections with people. The post resonated with a lot of mums on the site. So is it hard to make new friends later in life? Ingrid.
Well, I like the way you look at me later in life.
You're about 30. So you haven't got skin in the game yet. That bridge is yet to be crossed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, God, I can't even see that bridge. It's so far away. I can't agree with her. I am very different to her. I'm very sociable. I've never had a problem making friends. I seem to be making. In fact, I don't want to make any more friends because I haven't got time for the ones that I've got.
Are we your friends?
Yeah, you're my friends.
Good.
My two best friends. Good. NBFs. Good. Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't have a problem with that at all. But looking at this woman's history, I feel really sorry for her in some ways. She said that she was the wrong colour in the wrong area. So she was, from a child, she was separated, so it was difficult for her to get involved. Then subsequently she moved, but she didn't just move like a little way away, she moved really a long way away, so she was completely separated from friends that she had made. So she's never had that continuity and that history that you build up with school friends or university friends or whatever, work friends. But unfortunately, she's really, the problem lies with her, that she's complaining about being lonely, but at the same time she's contradicting herself, so saying she can't be bothered to invest in the time for making friends. But maybe she's frightened because they'll be taken away from her again as before. But maybe she should just pursue something where she's with people, so she's not lonely. She could do an upholstery course. It's great fun.
Yeah.
They're not going to be bosom buddies.
But she'd have like fingers like a prize boxer, wouldn't she?
Yeah, she would. It would be terrible. And she wouldn't be able to wear nails.
WWF or something. Oh, my goodness gracious. I mean, Albie, one challenge is that when people get into their 40s and 50s, a lot of social networks in that age group are already established. How do you enter them?
They are already established, but I didn't know that 42 was later life. I thought, 40 was the new 30 or something like that, so I'm not really sure that she's in later life. I do feel sorry for this woman up to a point, but personally, I and this might seem harsh, but I just don't know that she's got the right attitude. Some of the things that she's written on this post are, I don't want the hassle of making new friends, I can't be bothered. Making friendships and maintaining friendships requires effort. And if you're not willing to put that effort in, you can't be surprised when you don't have any friends.
Isn't that another factor, though, that people in their 30s, 40s and 50s are so busy trying to make a living, they haven't got time to invest in new friends?
But we all work the same hours in the week, don't we?
But didn't you find
3 children.
when you were at school, for example, or at college, you did have a bit more time, that recreation with which to hang out with people. But once you're in the rat race, there isn't really time, is there?
No, I disagree completely. When I speak to my mum, actually most of my mum's friends now she made at school in the playground. Those are all of her best friends she made in her 30s after she had me, and she's very sociable. But I think she's quite different to this lady.
But this lady couldn't because she moved. That was the thing.
But she also
moved too often.
Yes, but she also
and too far away.
She also said she had some friends that she was close with 5 years ago, and one of them said something like, "Oh, let's go out for a coffee," and she said the old her would have said, "Yes, let's do it." And she just went,
No, but hang on a minute. That's not that you've mixed two things. So
Have I?
moved. Yes, I think so. She moved away, and she had friends from.
By the way, can I just tell you, it's like Jeremy Kyle. Let me tell you, she's behind the curtain.
Is she going to storm
I've got
on?
the bodyguards.
We've
as
got
well.
security here and everything. We've got producer Liam's going to have to drag him off, but, or her. But go on.
No, my understanding was that she did have really good friends before. And now she's moved again, and she's at some toddler group with her youngest. And a girl said to her, that's quite new, said, "Oh, you know, would you like to meet for a coffee?" And then it was like, So it's two different people. But from taking the past to the present, she's not going to start that up again, making friends and establishing friendships. Don't moan about it. I'm with you on that. You know, sort of got to be a little bit hard.
Albie, what is the correct number of friends to have in your life?
Can't you only know 150 people?
Is that right?
Yeah, I think you can only your brain can only remember 150 people or something like that.
I wonder who's
but
been
I'm
pushed
sure I
out.
know more than 150 people.
I think I've got a ways to go. But I mean, is there, you know, because certainly when I was at school, for example, I wasn't really into groups. I just had like one or two friends and we would hang out together and sort of pair up.
Quality, not quantity.
It wasn't. Well, that's the story of my life, Ingrid. Let me tell you, Valentine's is tomorrow. I'll be reminded of that brutal fact. But is there an optimum number of, for example, Albie, at this point in your life, do you think, right, that's it, I've got enough friends now?
No, I would never say that I had enough friends because I don't know who I'm going to meet. I've met lots of new people.
It could be like
on
a B&B.
GBNews who I would say were my friends.
No vacancies.
I think you've always got to be open to new people in your life. And sort of be positive and take new opportunities and be polite and kind to people, and they'll be polite and kind to you back.
What do you think? Do you think, Georgia, that there is a set number of people you can manage to have in your life?
I think it depends because there are people who you have sort of different friendships with. You might not be as close with them, but maybe, you know, every few months you might meet up and you get along well. I think you can never say you have too many friends because, you know, you don't know who you're going to meet, who you're going to strike up a connection with. I think it's impossible to say. But the only thing I'm going to say about this woman is I think she needs a therapist.
Yeah, she probably does.
Sounds like she has a lot of
agree.
deep-set issues.
She might. I mean, if you were looking to make new friends, let's imagine you, for example, gregarious, popular person.
Hopefully.
But if let's say you moved somewhere else, you know, what particular methods would you deploy to make new friends?
I don't know. I have actually been in that position before. I've lived abroad twice, but I didn't really necessarily try and look for friends. It's just sort of happened when you're working or studying or you go to, I don't know, an event or something, you get talking to people. It's just something that happens naturally. I think this woman, she is putting herself in that position when she's going to playgroups or whatever with the other mums, but then she's saying no to going for coffee with someone. So it's like, it's almost as if she wants to have her cake and eat it. She wants people to be at her disposal to be friends with her, but she doesn't want it to be a two-way street. And I'm afraid if you want actual friendships, it requires effort.
Well, if you want ideas about finding friends, why don't you get on your knees and stuff a sofa or respring an armchair? It's worked for Ingrid. All of those things sounded filthy, and I'm sure.
I wasn't sure where you were going to go with that.
Sofa, I know that. Get on your knees and stuff a sofa. It doesn't sound good.
I tell you, the truth will out in relation to Ingrid's furniture repair. Look, lots more to come, including another great British game show. So don't go anywhere. And remember, headliners after 11 as well. And the Big Opinion monologue is now on our GB News Twitter feed. I'm delighted to say that Sammy has set that one up. So take a look, see if you agree. See you shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We've been talking about this lady online who's very lonely. She's in middle age and she can't find friends. No nonsense from Ricky, who says, "Dear Mark, tell her to get a dog." Oh. Who knows, maybe the dog won't like her. But let's hope she
Cat or rabbit, then?
Let's hope she makes a furry friend. How about this one? We've got Annie, who says, "People are very clique. They do not let newcomers in. I've moved into a new area and my friends are the newcomers to the village like me." On China, by the way, hi there, Mark. China is stronger than the rest of the world put together. Unfortunately, we now bow down to them, not the other way around. The West needs to stop manufacturing in China. I totally agree. Why aren't iPhones made in America? The vast country with a huge capacity for industrial output. UK, why don't we make things?
Yes.
TVs, radios. We make a few cars, don't we? But let's have more of that. And diet advice. Jan says, "Great advice from the American doctor that you had on." We're going to try and get a clip onto our Twitter feed from Dr. Ken Berry. However, a diet rich in protein is expensive for a lot of people and not sustainable financially. Great interview, though. And also, Janet wants to know where my bow tie is. I was wearing a bow tie the other night on Dan Wootton's show because I was at a posh do. But I'm keeping it real now. And I'm with you, by the way, till midnight. We've got Headliners after 11. Let's crack on with our final news agenda story in the company of my panel. With energy bills skyrocketing, mortgage rates soaring and a tax increase only weeks away, we're all having to make cutbacks. Well, the Daily Mail has partnered with two award-winning money journalists, Rachel Rickard-Strauss and Toby Waln, to collate 50 ways to manage the cost of living crisis. Their advice includes taking lunch to work, which apparently could save you £1,000 a year. Cancelling subscriptions as well, but could you live without Netflix? Have you got any sort of financial life hacks at all, Georgia?
I would probably say I waste a lot of money, so no.
Bringing
food.
lunch to work is good, isn't it?
So I actually work from home right now, but definitely when I've been working in an office before, and I will be about to be again soon.
Yeah.
I think it depends because, you know, sometimes you're waking up at 7 a.m, getting out the door, you know, you don't want to have some mouldy old salad for your lunch, you want to enjoy yourself. So I think it depends. But one of the things I was thinking is I think in terms of the ethics of it and also saving money, buying clothes and shoes secondhand is definitely the way to go, I think.
Brilliant. And it's more fun, isn't it?
It is fun, yeah, because you're sort of rifling through, you don't know what you're going to find.
Going to basically like a charity shop or a car boot sale is a treasure hunt.
Or even online, there's lots of places. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention certain.
Please, mention away.
Oh, am I allowed?
This is the home of free speech.
Oh, okay, excellent. I don't want it to get reported or something to Ofcom. Again, joke.
She said the O word. We're in trouble now.
Vinted is a really good app. You can
really?
buy...
Vinted?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So these shoes are actually vintage.
Oh, stop it. Listen, let's get a
And
shot of those.
the shoes.
Adam, can you help us out here? We've got a very fast-moving team here. Oh,
These
they are
shoes- anyway,
gorgeous.
the red shoes.
They look like
They're
straight out
from
of...
the 70s, and they were only £10 on Vinted. So
They're
I
lovely.
feel bad for the person
Dorothy.
that sold them because maybe they didn't make enough money. But oh well.
Wizard of Oz. I
Yeah,
tell you.
exactly.
Who knows where those shoes will take you next?
Hopefully nowhere bad.
Down the yellow brick road.
Albie, are you parsimonious?
I don't know what that means, Mark.
Neither do I. I'm like Stephen Fry. I just throw these words around.
Just to sound clever.
Absolutely. You careful with money?
Am I careful with money? Yes, I would say that I was careful with money. I think that, you know, there's nothing wrong with good old-fashioned things like, you know, getting rail cards or turning the heating down or sewing up a hole in a piece of clothing instead of buying something new, or buying something which is more expensive that lasts for a long time rather than all of this fast fashion stuff, a lot of it which comes from China, by the way.
Absolutely.
So I don't think any of this stuff is necessarily new. And what I find really funny in my generation is we sort of think we invent all of these things and it's kind of like, ooh, Vinted. It's just like going to a charity shop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's nothing new. It's
right.
just good old-fashioned, you know, living within your means.
Yeah, that's it. And that's what the country's got to do going forward, hasn't it? We've all got to tighten our belt, as have the government, Ingrid.
Absolutely. Living within your means is exactly, it is the key to everything. If you start overspending, you've just got to allocate and, you know, and don't, for goodness sake, get into debt by overspending because these loan sharks and everything. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And don't gamble, don't go onto these things but thinking it's a way out because actually it'll get you deeper in debt. Anyway, if I was absolutely stony broke, I wouldn't get rid of my car because it's cheaper to do it that way, but I'd freewheel down hills. And I actually do turn my heating down and I turn it off earlier than I did before because my oil, I'm on oil, is twice...
So I've heard. Can I just say we're drug-free here at GB News? But listen, it's probably a legal high. But look, the clock's against us. But there you go. What a very sensible panel I've got. All I can suggest is I do wear an extra jumper at home rather than crank up the heating. And I do like keeping leftovers. I think that's a big thing. Yeah, and I think sometimes things like curries taste even better the next day.
They do.
Well, this conversation has inspired tonight's Great British Game Show because it relates actually to cheap and expensive things because fake designer goods are commonly sold online from a couple of quid to hundreds of pounds. But can you tell the difference? It's time for this. That's right, the Mail did a brilliant article today and they were looking at some items of clothing that cost 100 quid and others 27,000, jewellery as well. So we're going to play a game of rags or riches in which my panel and you at home must work out whether this item is a rag or a rich. Let's start with this item. It's a necklace. Is it a rag or a riches?
Rag.
Please tell me that's a rag.
It's cheap as chips. It is a rag. It is a necklace
I was worried.
from a bog-standard high street retailer. How about this next item? It's a pair of shoes. Rags or rich?
I think that could be rich.
Rich?
I mean, they have red bottoms. So
Yeah,
that might be
fake.
yes.
That's right. They're Louboutins and they're 500 quid's worth of shoe, which I'm not wearing tonight, let me tell you. Wouldn't squeeze into those if I tried. How about this one? Rag or rich?
God, neither.
It looks vintage. Could be from Vinted. I think it's a rag.
Well, I'm afraid to say you've not got that posh eye because that is 600 quid's worth of floppy trouser. How about this one? Rag or rich?
Rag.
Fake.
I'm afraid it's the real deal. And
Fakes are so
many
good.
thousands
good.
of pounds they are. And Ingrid will be on eBay later.
Yeah, I will.
Buy it now. Thanks to my amazing panel, Liam and the team for working so hard, and stick around for headliners.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking grey and damp for many, but there could be some early brightness in the southeast. Let's take a look at the details. It'll be a cloudy start in the southwest with some outbreaks of light rain on Monday morning. A frost-free start, but feeling chilly in the breeze. Across the southeast, it should be drier, with a few brighter spells to start the day. A much wetter picture in Wales, though, where persistent rain is likely. It's been a wet few days in Wales, so there's likely to be a lot of spray on the roads. Wetter weather also extends into northwest England, with some heavy downpours in places.